Yeah, I'm starting. Hello, and greetings from somewhat unsunny Phoenix, Arizona. And welcome to the third webinar from the Mixed Media Journaling class. I'm really excited to be here and to bring in Nathalie Kalbach, who is this week's teacher. But I wanted to just wish you, first of all, a happy post-Thanksgiving for those of you who are in the United States and who are celebrating with turkey and the like, or at least turkey leftovers and the like. So listen, if you haven't been to one of our webinars before, let me just tell you how they work. If you're signed up for this class, hopefully you've joined the Schoolyard, which is our social media network, and if you have gone to the special event, the announcement for this webinar, and you've been posting questions there. And a lot of you have, and I've arranged all those questions here to ask Nathalie. But if you think of a question during the webinar and you'd like to ask Nathalie, simply put it into the comments section here on YouTube and put the word question in all caps with a colon after it so that I can easily find it as we go through. But we're going to begin with all the questions that are already on the Schoolyard. Those take priority, and we're going to get to as many as we can in the next hour. I know there's lots of questions and lots of interest and excitement, so glad to be here and ready to answer them. So I also want to remind you just a little minor piece of advertising, which is our 40% off Black Friday sale. It's the first time we've ever done anything like this. It's very, very kind of exciting and somewhat anxiety-provoking, because we are basically slashing the price on everything, and I feel like a stand-up huckster saying it to you, but it is a great opportunity to grab any course that you've ever thought once would be interesting to take but didn't have the time or the resources right then to jump on it and to grab it. It's only going to be happening for a couple days, so you have till Monday to take advantage of this. Hopefully you got an email about it. So basically there's every one of our courses is available, and if you use the code that you see below, get40, you can get 40% off. Maybe I'll talk about this a bit later on, but if you're wondering about which courses to take, in the Schoolyard, I posted a little description of every single one to help you make a choice. So, and if you're too busy to do it right now, to take the course, you have lifetime access to it. So sign up now and take it whenever you want to. And sign up for as many as you want. So, all right, enough advertising. Let's bring on Nathalie. Here she is. Hi, Nathalie. Oh, Nathalie. She's frozen. Let me just remind her that we're on because she is muted. Hi, sorry, Nathalie. Hey, Nathalie. Sorry to come upon you by surprise, but we are ready for you. Hello.
Hello. How are you? Good. I hope you see me. I can't see anything.
You can't? Can you? Okay, let me put my camera on so you can see me. Can you see me? Okay, good. Excellent. Good. Well, so Nathalie, we've had an amazing week with you in mixed media journaling, and it's been so interesting to see your take on mixed media, because it's pretty different from Seth's, and it's pretty different from Mary Beth's. What do you think about them as teachers? Have you taken classes with either of them before?
I have. So first of all, thank you so much for having me on Sketchbook School. It has been such an amazing ride. The whole experience is so wonderful, and the community is amazing. So I wanted to throw that out before I say hi.
Okay.
What do I feel? Well, Mary Beth Shaw and Seth have been friends for a long time of mine in the art world. I have not taken classes with them, but I have taught classes with Mary Beth Shaw, live. We have done art journaling classes, filming together. And I, of course, have Seth's book, and I have met him several times in different teaching environments. And I do love both of them a lot. I'm very excited about Keisha I know of her. I've never met her. I hope we will change that because we both live in New Jersey. So it's kind of like, why haven't you met her yet? I love her style, and I'm super excited myself to see more of her. Mary Beth Shaw has also taught for me classes because I do an online workshop course every year too. And I hope I can Seth now convince because he was very hesitant. I think this might have been with Sketchbook School, his first online class, and he did an amazing job.
He really did. He did. A lot of people really loved him and learned a huge amount, as did I. I've known Seth for a long time, but it was the first time that I've actually experienced him teaching, and it was amazing. So, all right, so we have a lot of questions, and we have basically 53 minutes to get through them, so I'm going to rattle through them in the order. These questions will be kind of random because I'm just pulling them up kind of in the order that they were presented. So, I also wanted to say before we go any further that we are going to be giving away a copy of Artful Adventures in Mixed Media, which is your wonderful book. And we're going to be giving away one copy of it to a member of the class. And that will happen later on in this webinar. Tell us a little bit about this book, because it is a beautiful book.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm super excited about your book, by the way. I'm going to buy it today. So plug for Danny. So, yeah, my book, the name is Artful Adventures in Mixed Media. And as you might have seen in my class section, I love to walk around in my neighborhood and explore it. I love to travel. And I think because I moved a lot in my life, not only countries, but also in my native country of Germany. Welcome to the city, by the way. So I moved a lot. And I always had to make my surroundings somehow my home. And I was always interested in exploring the new neighborhood and see what's different to my old neighborhood and what was just appealing even before I was into mixed media. And so this book is a kind of love letter to exploring your surroundings and taking whatever inspires you from your surroundings, whether through traveling, watching movies, or reading books, or walking in your hood, and take that and incorporate that in your artwork.
Yeah, that's it's. I think it's interesting because you've combined essentially urban sketching with mixed media journaling, which is something I've never seen anybody do before. And that's, so it's a way of exploring the world around you. It's a way of also creating great travel journals when you go to other places. And, that's a unique thing. And you've taught us a lot about that this week. And we got to walk around Jersey City with you and to see all the kind of motifs that you discovered in buildings. That was really great. And then how you convert those into art making. So it was all really, really new and interesting. But, okay, so we're going to be giving away a copy of Artful Adventures a little bit later. And meantime, here is the first question. So the question from Linda is, what transfer paper or product did you use to put the photo in your journal when you had that one demonstration where you showed us putting a photo into your journal? Do you remember what that was?
I think when I showed my journal, I was showing a couple of photo transfers, and these can be done in different ways. It wasn't part of the demo, it was part of the journaling, showing the journaling. And there are many different ways to do photo transfers. One of the easiest is basically you print it out on just normal printing paper, any photo that you like. And I prefer oftentimes a laser printer because when you use wet medium, it doesn't reactivate the ink. And normal paper is fine because basically what you do in those techniques is you take the printed out photo, you use gel medium underneath, you glue the photo on top, you burnish it very well, and then you let it dry and cure, and then after a while you can spritz the back of the paper, and basically what you take off is the paper pulp, And what stays on your surface that you use, it can be paper, it can be canvas, it can be all kinds of different surfaces. That is the ink that you printed on the paper. So the paper is just a carrier in a way. And so it's not important. It's just very cheap paper. And you can do transfers, and there are so many different ways. This is just one. If you Google, you find a ton of transfer techniques. I even taught an online class that is about transfers, but it's a very, very fun technique. And the beauty of it is that you never get a perfect image. It's not about a perfect image, because then you can just print it, right? You don't have to do all the work and extra stuff. It's about these surprising elements and a more ghostly and imperfect image and transfer. So it's a lot of fun. So if you just Google gel transfer, Linda, then you should be able to find a lot of demonstrations on it. Give it a try. It's fun.
Fantastic. That's great. It's interesting. I think mixed media journaling is also one of the many things that's great about it is if you don't want to draw, or you're feeling like your drawing skills can't tackle a particular image that you're interested in, there's all different techniques for using existing images, or for taking drawings or photographs and for transferring them into a new environment, the environment of mixed media. So transferring using gel is a great way of doing it. Tracing, there are other things that we've talked about, or you've talked about, for doing that. And of course, it flips the image, right? When you do that, doesn't it flip the image? So if you use text,
there are some things that you need to. At some point, you learn that too. I think it's always important to just try it and not think about it. But of course, if you do something like a person, even if the person is recognizable, we are not symmetric, right? So if I would do a transfer image of Danny, and I wouldn't flip him beforehand in my Photoshop or photo editing program, then you might think something is off with Danny in that transfer because I flipped him, right? So if you do persons, then it's always good to flip him around first before you print it out. For that matter, actually also buildings, because you will, if you pay attention, you will see that door handles are on the upper side as they are supposed to be. Writing is a bigger issue, actually, because then the writing is mirrored. So, but I think these are all kind of things and tricks that you learn later that you have to, kind of follow. But just play with it for now. You will figure that out very, very soon.
Sure. I was going to say lettering, because that was to me the obvious thing, which is your lettering. If you want to set type and then put it in your book, it's going to be, but you can also print it out in reverse, or you could, Anyway,
right.
Good. Excellent. So let's go to our next question. This is from Joey Sarna. Joey has several questions, and this is the first one. You cut your own stencils from Duralar. I find it very difficult to cut. Please help. How else can you use it? I have some, but I've not been happy with the results. I'm not sure if you can explain without showing us that, but can you tell us a bit about cutting your stencils?
Yeah, so there are many ways, of course. And again, anything I say, you have to take it with a grain of salt, right? That's just my approach. There are a million other approaches to that, and nothing is wrong or right unless it hurts you. So hurts you, then it's wrong, definitely. But yes, you can use Duralar, and there are different thicknesses. So Duralar is basically an acetate sheet and transparency. There are different companies out there that have them. Some people just use the file folder, those clear protection sheets that you used to have when you have ring binders. Anyone remembers those things? So you put things inside or whatever to protect your stuff. So basically there are different approaches. You can use a craft knife. The most important thing for success there, a cutting knife or a craft knife or a paper carpet cutter is fine too. So to set yourself up for success for that one, it's practice, of course, as with anything, but also that your blade is not dull. I think that's the most important piece of it. Make sure that you change your blade, and especially since it's plastic and it's a little bit sturdier, it gets dull very quick. So you constantly have to change it. You can also, and that I don't like to teach that really, but I put it out there just because it's a safety thing. But a very good way to do stencil cutting is actually using like a wood burning tool or a burner tool, and then you trace something onto your acetate sheet, and you burn the plastic out in a very well ventilated area, and of course with a mask because you're burning plastic, and of course you make sure that you don't hurt yourself or other people or burn down the house. So that being said, that's what you can do in terms of cutting. But I think the most important thing in the beginning is always, because we always have to practice, right? And my favorite quote is, the master has failed way more times than you have even tried. So trust me, been doing this for many years, and I've done a lot of terrible things, and I've failed a lot in making stencils. And I think oftentimes we have this like wonderful picture of how intricate we want to have a stencil or stamp or whatever. And that's really tough. You know, the person who does that for many years, they didn't just get there. They did like very easy things. So when I say set yourself out for success, I mean try something really, really simple in the beginning. So you get a feeling of how does it feel when the blade runs smooth? How is it to make a curve? How is it to make a straight line? And then once you get these like very, like let's say you make just a house and you cut a house out and like little windows, you know, you get like smaller and smaller with your approaches. Once you got that down, you can move on and make more and more intricate stencils. Or if you're like, I don't like this cutting thing anymore, or people have problems with their hands, there are all kinds of cutting machines out there where you can scan your own design in that you drew, and then you have the machine basically cut your stencil. These things get cheaper and cheaper nowadays. I personally think if you don't use it professionally, you don't really need it. But again, that's my opinion. I'm sure other people think differently about it. And the second part of the question, I think, was what else you can do with those Durala sheets. You can do a ton of stuff with them. You can transfer images. I've painted, on top of it. I think Mary Beth Shaw showed a nice way on using them as collage images. They can be part of your art journal just as a page divider. So there's a lot of things that you can do with that. I would not buy the 100 block with it. You can also buy like a little one that has like, I think 15 or 20 and start out with that. I know we always want to do a good deal, and then you have like 200 things of something that you might not use again. But I hope that answers the question on what to do with Durala.
Excellent. Good. I just wanted to check because I'm hearing from some people that there's a bit of an issue with echo, and I'm wondering if that's due to the fact that we're not using headphones. So I might put on a headphone just to see if that will make it a little bit better. Can anybody say that in comments if you're hearing an echo from Natalie? I'm just going to put on my headphones now, so hopefully that will get better. Good. Well, so let's move on to the next question, pending some feedback from the audience. Everybody says it's fine. Okay. I guess. One thing I wanted to ask you about stencils, I would assume that a key thing is having clean, sharp lines, right? That's a really important part of this. Oops, now I'm not hearing you.
Going for, right? So I have a lot of stencils that are very wonky or, cutty. But if you want something very geometrical, like
Natalie, maybe just take off your headphones. It's okay. I'll just have them on my side.
Okay.
Yeah. You can see me. You can hear me.
Yes. No, I can see you and hear you.
I still can't hear you though. I'm sorry, I've lost your audio now.
There you are.
Audio, Natalie.
Can you hear me?
1 second. Sorry, guys. We are just trying to fix this. Okay, good. Everybody's saying it's better now, but I can't hear Natalie, so...
You can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
I'm not hearing you. Anything I can think is... Oh, they can hear us both. Okay. Well, I can't hear you, but... All right, now I can... Natalie? Say hi.
Yes.
Yes, okay, I can hear you. Strange. All right, good. We will continue and see what happens. Okay, guys, next question coming up is... To some extent you answered this, but let's just see what you have to say about it now. Do carving tool blades need to be replaced? How long do they stay sharp?
Well, that's a good question. I don't really know. It's not. I don't carve stems every day. I do carve a lot of stems, and I think it really depends on what you're using. So if you're using, as I do, those rubber plates or razors, they are so soft and like butter almost, that the blade doesn't really take a toll on that. And I have carving tools that I have for many, many years. I just happen to misplace them often, and then I buy a new one, and then of course I find my old one. So I have about five of them laying around. So I've never had that issue where I felt like my blades are not sharp anymore. If you do, on the other hand, lino carving, with like those lino boards, linoleum boards, then that's a bigger issue.
Wait, hold on. I think we need to wait because people are complaining about a really bad echo now. Ever since I unplugged my headphones, so let me try this again. Now it's perfect.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Natalie, can you just talk now? Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yes, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I just can't hear you. Okay, that's good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you guys out here there? Okay. Now it sounds good. Like 1, 2, 3. Just speak along with me, Natalie, just to see if everything's good.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, good. All right, good. Excellent. Okay, we're back. We're back to normalcy again. Excellent.
Okay.
So carry on. Yeah, go ahead.
I understood some of the parts that I said about the. So basically, rubber is very soft and it's like butter, so you don't have to worry about it that often. When you do linoleum, on the other hand, for printing, that's a very hard and sturdy material, and then blades are getting dull easier. My teacher that I had in some of my printmaking classes would just sharp them a little bit with sanding paper. Just like, I don't think that's like the perfect way to do it. But on the other hand, most of those carving tools are not the most expensive ones. I think a set can be bought for like $6 to $10. So I would probably try the sanding paper, sanding block approach before I buy a new one. But again, it doesn't happen that fast if you don't use harder material than the rubber eraser stamp.
Because I've seen carving tools that there's a certain kind of carving tool that's basically a wooden handle with a permanent blade, and then there's also another kind that has a blade. It has a handle that you can remove the blades from. You can change them. Sometimes it comes with you can unscrew the back of the handle and you can keep the blades in there. Those are for lino cuts. That's basically
they are
what I've
all for wood or lino.
Right.
So I like the ones with the wooden handle. There are cheaper ones too, and this is not that expensive. I just like those because I feel they're nicer to the hand. I like tools that are smooth and nice and lay in your hand. The plastic ones from Speedball, for example, they're perfectly fine to use and great, and they contain everything. So I think the price point is not that like huge between the two of them. What I don't like about the speedball, I'm just saying that as an example, there could be other companies, is that you kind of like you take off the blade with your hands from the top, and I'm prone to accidents, guys. So I like this one where you put your little wooden tool in the back, and then that pops out the blade. But again, if you're not an accident-prone person, then by all means take the cheaper version.
Yeah, I'm accident-prone too, so I know what you mean. All right, moving on to less dangerous activities. So Joey has another question here. She says, or maybe it's a he, I'm not sure. I've been using an old book for class projects and it's coming unbound. Have you any suggestions for binding finished pages of artwork? That's actually a good question for next week's teacher as well. So tell us what you think.
Yeah, so first of all, if you have a book, if you use like a normal book, which I'm assuming maybe, and then oftentimes the problem is that the spine can't hold the inserts anymore because you're getting thicker and thicker, and then you put so much pressure and work on the spine that it falls apart. There are some bookbinding repairing tape possibilities out there. So if you really, really want to save that book and it's so important to you that you want to keep it in a better shape again, you could look for repair tape under bookbinding supplies. And then, yes, you can bind your work, which I think is wonderful. And it's a little bit tricky because you have to think ahead. So if you do your own work and you want to bind it single pages later, there are some single page journaling, single page binding techniques out there. They're mostly more complicated than having folded pages, right? So you fold a page in the middle and you make signatures and then you sew them together. That's one of the easiest, actually, binding techniques. That's what I usually use. So that's a little bit hard because if you have like a whole page, you don't want to fold it because only the middle page of a signature will be, when you open it again, the whole page, right? Mm-hmm. So the way to get around it is either you are very, very, very good in anything you do in the first run, for example, single page binding, and you can Google that, of course, or a way around it is you create a Leporello or like accordion folding book, which means you create pages, you cut out pages that are slightly bigger than your single page. You glue on the top and the bottom, like, your work, not top and bottom, on the front and the back page. And then you make these accordion books that, fold. If you don't get what I mean.
No, we understand totally.
Accordion book. But that's a great way to make to bind your single work into a book, and then you bind a little, ribbon around it or whatever, and it's a great way to do that. But there are so many beautiful bookbinding techniques out there. That's a whole big rabbit hole.
That's another course. Yes. No, in fact, next week Keisha is going to show us how to bind our own books using basically manila folders from Staples and rubber bands. Yeah. So you can kind of make books out of anything, but this whole problem of hugely fat books that are kind of bursting at the seams is new to me. It's different for certainly the kind of just drawing in books that I do. I've never had that problem, so much thickness. But all right, moving on to the next question. You mentioned foam stamps. What are these, and can we make them? Asks Anat.
Yes, Anat, that's a great question. So foam stamps are made of foam, as the word, of course, implicates. But what you use them for, first of all, They're great because you can use them with paint even more so than rubber stems. Rubber stems, you always have to be super careful that you clean them right away, that the plastic of acrylic paint doesn't dry on. They were initially made, of course, to be used with pigments or dyeing pads, right? So, but I've always been a rebel and used them with acrylic paints too. But again, you have to be careful. And the other problem is, if it's like very thin and detailed line work, if you have a rubber stamp, like let's say I take one of those rubber stems that I made, which is like a warehouse, a powerhouse here in Jersey City, the line work is very, very intricate. And if you use acrylic paint on top of it, it can go very easily into the creases so that you actually don't see the image when you try to stamp it. So foam stems are usually made of boulder design. So this is a very sturdy foam here. These are some of my designs that I made with another company as well. And they initially were mostly done to print on fabric. And now a lot of quilters use them, or use them on canvas. So anything that kind of, has a give as well. But they're great to use in your own or on printing plates. So if you do mono printing, use a gel plate, you want to make marks into your plate, then these are awesome to use because, you can make nice imprints with them into that soft body. And yes, you can make your own foam stems. In fact, I often teach making foam stems. You can make some fun stuff like this is actually one that I didn't make, but I want to show it anyway because when I was looking for some, I found this. A friend of mine made this little skull, and she cut it out, and so do I. I do that too. There's this craft foam that you can buy, or craft foam, I think it's called. They are like thin sheets of foam. I don't know if you guys can see that from the side, how thin it actually is. And some of them have like an adhesive backing on the back, right? So you can peel it off and then glue it on something, and that can create a stem. So I oftentimes do that in my classes. Here are some samples, some demonstration samples. So this is actually a little wooden block, which is used for spacing. And I buy like a big box of those and give every student one of those. And then we use those foam craft sheets, and they cut out little patterns and make their own stems. You can make them, on the back and the front. They will harden and not hold on as long as some other stems. But it's a fun way and very cheap way to make those. You can also use those craft sheets of foam and engrave them with a skewer or, and then make an engraving plate basically and then stamp with it. So again, it's a rabbit hole.
Rabbit hole. It's interesting because when you were showing those initially, I hadn't understood. I was thinking that it was like a woodcut. So when you do a woodcut, so much of the work is dealing with the background, the areas that you don't want to have the negative space, that if you get ink into it, then you worry that that's going to get onto the print. But what you're describing with a thin foam is really interesting because it means you don't have to worry about that at all. You just create your positives, and then you basically are gluing them down onto your background, and that's so much less effort. Woodcuts are just, the nightmare is always to me the background, or then you slide and you accidentally cut through your positive part of it. So
exactly.
Anyway, anybody who's tried this, I'm sure, has experienced what I'm talking about, which is the sheer labor of woodcuts, or lino cuts are a bit easier, but anyway, good, excellent. Well, that's very helpful. So foam. So what is the? Can you just tell us again the name of the thing? If I was going to go to say Amazon or something or Blick to look for the foam, what would I search for?
I think it's craft foam.
Craft
foam.
Okay. Interesting.
Or craft foam plate, and you can get them in different sizes, and they're extremely cheap. And I buy like 50 and like little ones, and bring those like to classes and have people make their own stems, and then I show them my foam stems, and then they can play with both. I think it's always this like interaction of having something handmade that's your own handwriting,
Sure.
and then something that's, something you can't easily make by hand. So,
I mean, Sarah says you could also glue it to an old credit card, which is
yes,
interesting.
or
Yeah.
cardboard.
Or cardboard, yeah, right, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to our next question. Our next question is, on one of the journal pages you shared, you used gauze. Can you explain that? Was the gauze laid over an image, or was an image printed on the gauze? Was it a stamp on the gauze? I didn't quite get how it was done, says Tina.
Okay, I saw that question before, so I'm prepared.
Wow,
You don't get
well
that all
done.
the time. This time you do. So I actually pulled it up because I was like, oh, where's that? So I think she meant this page here. Let's see if we can see it. You see it, Danny?
Yes, I can see it.
What you see.
No, I can see the edges of it. I can see that the gauze is extending beyond the page. Yeah, so that's you can tell that it's gauze. Yeah.
Right. So what I did here was I actually photoshopped an image that I took, a photo of a building, and then I printed it on the gauze. The gauze was first mounted on some printing paper because it needs a carrier to not jam up your printer. And those of you who have experience with gem printers know this is not the funnest thing to do. So yeah, and then I just attached it with gel medium onto a painted background. I had it laying around forever. I did it in a class with someone else actually, and I always had high goals with this, and going with my approach of not hoarding things and use it at some point. I was like, okay, apparently I've had this in my collage drawer for like ever, and I really like it. I'm just going to use it now. And you know what? I'm not sad about it.
Well, it is nice because it feels organic because it's gauze as opposed to feeling like plastic or even paper, I suppose. So that is a nice addition. There's some discussion in German among German speakers about whether it's Moosgummi. Is that correct?
Yes, Moosgummi, meine
Moosgummi,
Lieben. Das könnt ihr verkaufen.
Okay, sehr gut. Okay, all right, here we go to the next question. So Sarah says, I used a stamp with distress ink on acrylic paint yesterday, and it is still smearing. What's up with that?
Yeah, what's up with that? So yeah, as I said, different teachers, different approaches. I know that Seth loves to use distress ink. I personally only use distress ink when I print last or on paper, more paper. So if you have distress ink, it's always reactivating for me, at least with how I work on top of something. I don't know how your page or your layer of acrylic paint looks like. Sarah, was it, right?
Yes, Sarah.
So I don't know. I haven't looked on how the paint was applied. I don't know. What I assume is if you have something that is very, very smooth, so if the paint is very, very smooth, then there's no porous surface where that ink can ever hold onto and dry onto. If you have acrylic paint, so if, for example, if you apply it with a credit card, the surface gets very, very plastic soft, right? If you apply it with a brayer or a brush, then you have a lot of texture in itself, and the acrylic paint is not a smooth surface, so it's really harder for this ink to dry on. I love the ink. I personally really don't use it on acrylic paint. I'm amazed that it works for Saf, and I know it works. I mean, it doesn't work for me. So I rarely use it if it's not on paper or in something where I know I don't work on top of it anymore. And I usually use archival ink or anything that is, not distress ink. It's for me, it's like, shoot me now. It doesn't work for me.
I can understand why it wouldn't work. I mean, it would make sense to me that it's a layer of plastic, and then you're basically, if your ink isn't waterproof, it's not locking into the fibers of the paper the same way. So, it can kind of remain. It can look dry, but it isn't dry for a long time. So, yeah, I think that's good advice. Okay, so this is a very general question, but let's see what you have to say about it. Esther says, I still have problems working with stencils. I find it difficult to get the paint on paper. So I'm not sure if she means that she's not actually able to get through the stencil to the page, or if she's getting not getting good edges. I've had the same problem. Stencils seem like a nightmare to me, but tell us what you think about how to use them best.
Yeah, I think, so of course that's a little bit hard to, like, it's always better if you kind of see how people do it, like in action, and then you can give
Sure.
a better advice. I think there are two things. One is practice, of course, but that's kind of sad because it's like, try again, like, well, thanks, that's helpful.
Thank you.
But I think like there are two important things when you do it. So if you have a stencil, let me grab one just to try to show it. So I can't do it live, of course, that's going to be too hard for me to really use paint, but I layered this stencil that I made on top of some paper so you can see it. So one of the things that's important is you have to make sure that you kind of hold it down, the stencil, right? So that it's really flat on your page. So if you move around on your stencil, just like move around with your fingers to hold it in place. Sorry. And the other thing is I like to use this cosmetic sponge. It's not a must, but it gives me a little bit more control over dabbing it on top of the surface. And the biggest tip is it's like Karate Kid. As my friend Julie always said, it's like wax on, wax off. So dab on, dab off. You have paint on the cosmetic sponge. Sorry, guys.
No problem. You want to take? Should we take a break? Yes. Okay. Good. So while Natalie has a drink, I just wanted to say we're soon going to move on to questions from the live comments here. So if you have a question that's come up while you've been listening to Natalie, put it into the comments. Just make sure you have your the word question in all caps so I can easily identify it as such. And we will start getting to those in a minute. All right, Natalie, are you okay?
Yeah, I didn't die yet. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay, good. She's still here.
Like one of
still alive.
Theater moments where you're like, please.
We've never had a death. We've never had a death during a webinar so far.
Let's keep it that way.
Let's keep it.
But yeah, it's like this dab on, dab off, and you try to. It's almost as if you're there is no paint on there. You want to have the minimalistic amount of paint on top of your stencil, and then if you keep your stencil in place, make sure that it's pressed down and dab, not rub. The paint is less likely to seep underneath your stencil.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. All right, excellent, good. So here we have Esther is also having problems with carving stamps, and she wants to ask you briefly about that. She says, I'm having difficulty carving stamps. Do you have any suggestions as to techniques, tools, and material? Well, that's a fairly large question, and you did show us how to do that in the class, but is there anything you want to add to that would help Esther?
It's really practice again, and I think in the class I showed really shortly where I had like a piece, like a demo piece, and I just, practiced like lines, curves, circles. What does the different tools in that toolbox do? Like if the blade is thin, if I put more pressure in, if I put less pressure on there, it is unfortunately really like, not all my first stems didn't look that great. Right. I'm actually amazed looking at the forum at how amazing those stamps are and what an amazing job you all do. Trust me, my stamps didn't look anything like that. So I think we're too hard on ourselves for things that we haven't done or practiced yet. And don't forget, also comparison is the thief of joy. So don't look at what other people post. You don't know in which, like how much they practice or whatever. Just keep on practicing that a little bit, and also don't expect it to look like perfect right away. I've done this for many years now, and I can compare myself to someone better anytime because I follow stamp carvers on Instagram, and they're unbelievable. And I'm like, how can you do this with your hand? That's insane. But that doesn't keep me from doing my stuff. I'm like, I'm cool with my rough kind of grungy style,
You do Nathalie very well.
Exactly. That's the best I can do.
That's the best Nathalie. You do Nathalie better than anybody, so that's great. All right, guys. So we are about to start doing questions from this live thing. But in the meantime, why don't we announce who has won the copy of your book, Artful Adventures in Mixed Media? If you didn't win it, you can still buy it. But if you did win it, then that means that you are, drum roll please, Ann Henderson. So Ann Henderson, Morgan took every name of everybody in this class, and she selected Ann. So congratulations, Ann. Hopefully you're here. If you're not, we will let you know that you won. And next week we'll be giving away something else. So stay tuned for that. So if you're enrolled in this course, there is a giveaway each week. So that's nice. And it's nice to be able to share this book with you because it is a wonderful book. And we actually have 2 copies at home. I think one of them we're giving away. But anyway, so let's go to the questions now from the audience. This is one from, interestingly enough, Fat Hobbit. Fat Hobbit asks, Nathalie, what determines your color scheme for a page? You often choose diverse colors, and I love the color schemes that you used in the demonstration. So what's going on with your palette?
Yeah, I think as everyone maybe has like a phase where you do certain colors over and over. Like I used to have this distinct where everyone was like, oh my God, Nathalie always uses green and blue. I don't have that anymore. I think colors are influenced for me by my moods, but also what I see when I walk around. I get very very heavily influenced by color schemes that I see on buildings, on posters, I'm like, ooh, this is cool. I mean, my mind is like, unfortunately, I have a wonderful, very supporting husband who's also very creative, and he gets it. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, that would make a good stencil. Oh, that's a great color scheme. I got to take a picture of that. So I oftentimes also take photos of things where I'm very, drawn to the color scheme as well. And then again, it can be also my mood. So, but it's interesting because I look at my pages and I know they look maybe cheerful because the colors are cheerful, but I know that I wasn't in a cheerful mood. So I'm a little bit different from what maybe Seth chooses and how he expresses his inner feelings with color too. But yeah, so it's basically influences from around or fashion. And I just love playing with colors and see how they look with each other. So I would have, fun fact, when I was not doing art, I would mostly run around in black clothes. And I think art brought me to now also embrace a different Nathalie that likes colorful clothes. And I think that's part of it is like seeing all these colors, seeing color combinations, seeing how you can create interesting color combinations by using complementary colors or, something that's more muted. So it's an interesting thing. So yeah, I'm interested and I really collect color schemes and I'm like, I want to try this, So I hope that answers the question.
No, that's very good. That's good advice. One of the things when we did the iPad class, which is a class we did recently, one of the things that we talked about in that is the idea of finding palettes out in the world. So you can go and, if you see a page in a magazine that has interesting colors, if you see something out in the world that you can just take a photograph of with your camera, you'll keep a record of these different combinations. With the iPad, it's pretty easy because you can go in and you can, with an eyedropper, you can just pick the 5 colors and say, okay, these are the colors. But also you'll find it's interesting if you just Google color combinations or palettes. There's a lot of graphic designers who have created interesting combinations, and you can use those as well. Just to give you some new ideas and push you in new directions. I find so often, though, that I end up using color palettes that are basically the stuff I have on hand. There tend to be colors that I buy a lot. So I like oranges and yellows, so I buy and I have a lot of different ones. And sometimes it's kind of laziness; you just grab whatever's at hand. But I think it's a good idea to maybe push yourself and to think about a palette before you start something. Do you ever do that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time, and I think that's an interesting approach too. I have a lot of students who say they don't like brown and they don't like neutral colors, and I actually think if you play a little bit more with color, you will maybe find your love for yellow or for colors that you thought you never liked.
Right.
And I do have that often in a class, that especially when the class is 1 or 2 days long, that students are very surprised that some of their favorite pages are all of a sudden pages that have colors that they thought they didn't like, or I haven't yet met a color that I don't like, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. I think every color is beautiful, but some colors next to other colors aren't so beautiful. So that's really the question. It's never in every color.
It's like real life, right? I think I always say colors are your friends, and you think about how you perceive a color. I mean, I'm not the therapist, or I don't have experience, so I don't want to make that up. But how I see it is what is the personality of red? Okay, for me personally, red is my loud friend who's funny, who you want to have at the party making jokes and getting everyone to be drawn. And I love to be around red. But you know what? I need a breather from red once in a while. So, I don't use red that often because, as that sounds horrible as a friend. I mean, more I need a little breather from red once in a while. So red is not very prominent, versus blue is my very calming, wonderful friend who gets along with everyone. You can sit him next to everyone at the party and he will make do with everyone. I don't know why it's a he all of a sudden, maybe because I'm talking to you, but blue is a good friend. So I use blue all the time. So I try to kind of give colors these funny little quirky stories and ideas, and that makes it also easy to introduce them to each other.
And your friends don't always mix. Your red friend might not mix with your blue friend, so
exactly.
So you have to worry about that too. Okay, so here's another question. This is Swamp Crone is wondering, where do you get wood spacing blocks? I'm not quite sure what that is. Yeah.
Tough question. So I think she refers to what I showed here.
Ah, yes. Okay.
This is a European thing. You find those in the Home Depot kind of version, Baumarkt, or whatever is the Netherlands equivalent. Easier, anything that's wood flooring. I have yet to find those in America. I don't know. You guys don't do it. So, but you can have them cut you, and you can go to any of those bigger stores and have them cut you wood pieces, or as I forgot who it was, but some very, very smart person on the YouTube forum just said you can use cardboard and just mount it on cardboard as well.
I've also seen even in my Blick, they have a section of balsa wood. So they sell all different kinds of pieces of wood, and balsa wood is kind of soft, but I'm sure it would work perfectly well. So, and they come in lots of different shapes and squares, and they're small enough that you could use that. So, all right, good.
Yeah.
I missed this question, but Michael apparently asked, and Jesus is echoing that. How do you achieve using several colors when stamping?
Oh, you mean if the stamp has different colors in the
same stamp,
image,
in the same image? Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah. Yeah,
that's so that there are different approaches again. One is if you use ink pads, you could carefully dip the stamp half and half, in two different ink pads. and then stamp it. You could also make a mask. So you stamp the image onto a piece of paper that you cut out, so you have the outline, and then you decide you can cut it wherever you want in little pieces. Does that make sense? So you have, this is now a piece of paper, this shape, and you mask off whatever you don't want to do in a different color. So that's a little bit more cumbersome. And then there's also, of course, the possibility, especially when you do foam stamps or, but also with rubber stamps, where you roll out with a brayer different colors next to each other on a palette. And so when you stamp into the paint, then it will take different colored paint in different areas. So there's a lot of different ways to approach it. I would say just play with it. There's 100 million ways. None is wrong, none is right. Just like play with it. Just clean your stamps in between. Use a piece of paper and think of the different ways how you could lay out ink. Oh, the other thing that some people do is you could use like your Durala. Here's another use for your Durala, your acetate sheet, and you can stamp on top with some of those ink pads and use different colors. And you because it's on this plastic sheet, on this acetate sheet, the ink stays wet longer on top of it. And then you make your own ink pad and use it that way.
I see. So it's like a custom ink pad for that one use. It's because it's mono printing. So I imagine you don't want really to print it twice. You don't want to use one color and then use another, because you're going to have registration problems and so forth a lot of times. But I feel like in general, this is not like screen printing where you want to have extremely sharp things. The whole nature of this rubber stamp use in mixed media is rough and ready and inaccurate, and that's part of the charm of it. So, all right, here's this kind of a specific question. Have you used Magic Stamp moldable foam stamps? Do you like them? And do you have any tips on making and using them? Asks Sonia.
So there's a company that sells these, like, they look almost like cleaning foam pads, and they are heat responsive. So you heat them up with a heating tool. It's foam. You heat them up with a hair dryer or heating tool, and then you press them on a textured surface, or you press them on top of a key or coins or whatever, and you make an imprint, and then you can stamp with those. I have used those. I have taught with those. I do like them, but I'm not a huge fan of them because the imprints for me are very soft. I think it's fun to use them. And don't get me wrong, but personally, it's not my thing. But they're extremely cheap too. I think you can buy a set of 8 for a couple dollars, and I would just try it. I don't know. I haven't found a material that's quite the same that you just find somewhere and cleaning material and so on. And to be honest, I don't actually want to do that, because I always feel like if you introduce heat to something, you don't know what you release into the air and what you breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So if they are made for those magic stamps, and the manufacturer hopefully, has done their research and they're good in telling you can do that, then that's fine. I personally have, as you know, a little cough, so I need to be careful, and I oftentimes use a mask, or whenever I use a heating tool on something, even when I emboss, I'm very, very careful. After all, embossing powder is also just plastic, so you're heating up plastic particles. They're very fine. You're breathing them. Not to scare you, it's just be aware when we do mixed media, we are very prone to try all kinds of fun things, but be also cautious about how you, have chemical reactions or things in the air. Just be careful a little bit.
No, that's very good advice. I have I haven't really considered that before. It's not really something that when you're using ink and watercolors is as much of an issue, but certainly
Right.
that's certainly a big consideration. Well, we're almost done with time, but I see, by the way, there's been a lot of great conversations going on in the comments. We have all kinds of people with all sorts of experience in mixed media who are putting some great comments. And another point that several people make, which I think is really great, when you want to have multicolored stamps, you can also use a brush pen and basically color in the rubber stamp, and then that will transfer, that ink will transfer as well. So that's a way of being very much more detailed and when you're making basically a monoprint. So that's good. So the final question is interesting, self-serving perhaps, but Chris Minton asks, I signed up for the Drawing Without Talent class because I can't draw. Natalie, how did you begin drawing, as you said your background was in art?
So yeah, I need Danny's book. No, I think, yeah, I just love when people are like great sketchers. For me, like going on sketchbook school and seeing those gorgeous work that everyone does and the really cool courses makes me want to do it even more. I'm not a big people sketcher, so that's why I'm cheating a lot and I'm doing a lot of tracings and stuff. But I do sketch and draw a lot of buildings. I actually paint them too, and I have hopefully, so I think, gotten better and better and better with practice and explored different ways of using my mixed media with it, and that also I think helped. I think mixed media helped me with the drawing and sketching part because that came first. Because there are a lot of accidents that happen, things you don't foresee, things how materials react to each other that you don't have the experience before, or it's just the way how you use it in that moment. And it helped me overcome this perfectionistic approach that everything has to be fine. And I also think you don't need to have that in your hobby. We have enough areas in our life where we strive for perfection. This should be the last one. And that helped me with also drawing and sketching and doing that more. I might not share all of that because, it's not my forte. And I should not probably teach you how to draw faces or things like that's why we have Danny and Kosia, and other people on there. But yeah, that's how I started, and I love having that as another tool in my box and things of express myself and do my artwork.
That's great advice. I mean, what I really have liked about having this class is very different from anything we've had at Sketchbook School before because we do focus on drawing so much. But I think what's been great for me and Kosha as well as for other people in the school is to have the opportunity to loosen up and to not be as focused on rendering, like does this drawing look like it's supposed to. With mixed media journaling, it's been just a free-for-all of just fun, creativity, abstraction, mucking around with art supplies, learning new things. And I think it's a nice kind of little mini vacation to go on, to step away from drawing and then to come back. And I'm also hoping that people who are really more focused on mixed media journaling and who may be apprehensive about drawing can sort of learn that, it's not that hard, and that there are classes that we offer that will take you from sort of nothing, no talent, in fact, to being able to draw a bit. And which brings me full circle back to talking about this giant sale that we're having now. So the courses like how to draw without talent, or beginning, or a drawing a day, which will really teach you these fundamentals and get you going. And Natalie, as a member of the faculty, you get to take any class you want for free. So you should be signing up for madly. But for the rest of you, you get 40% off. So you should be signing up madly too. And remember, every class that we offer, you have lifetime access to. So, if I were you, I would stock up on different classes because we've never done this before. I don't know if we'll ever do it again, but this is your one chance to get in on it. So listen, Natalie, thank you so much for being part of this class, for sharing so generously all the stuff that you've learned in your explorations. You're an amazing teacher, and you're just really fun and funny, and that is just so welcome and so nice. And for being so active since the class has launched. You've been a member of the schoolyard, you're showing up today for the webinar, and we really appreciate your involvement with our community. We're really glad to have you be part of our family of people. And to the rest of you, thanks for joining us today. We are wrapping up now, and we have next week. Next week is going to be really fun as well, and we're going to go in a whole new direction with Keisha Devaney. So we'll see you there in class, and see you for the next week's webinar. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Nathalie. And thanks. I hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving. And we'll see you next week. Okay. Yeah. Bye-bye then.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.